see the most popular band around. You go to a concert at a big stadium where there's tens of thousands of people there. It's completely sold out. And when the band gets on stage, they start to play, but you can't hear them at all. Why? Because people are screaming so loud that you can't hear the amplification from the stage. This was not a new thing to the Beatles. They experienced this throughout their 4 years of touring throughout the United States and UK and all around Europe. You all know about the Beatles, and I hope to tell you how they got popular, how they started, and some effects they had on our culture. I love the Beatles. They're one of my favorite bands, and I don't think many people understand how much influence they had on our culture. So let's start off with how they got started. In 1957, John Lennon formed a skiffle group, which is basically blues and simple blues and folk music, with fellow classmates called the Quarrymen. And he eventually let Paul McCartney in after he auditioned for the band. And after that, Paul asked if his friend George could be in the band as well, and he was accepted. Pete Best was the drummer at this time, who was eventually replaced with Richard Starkey, as we know as Ringo Starr today. And that's the final piece. By 1960, they were playing in little clubs in Hamburg, Germany, which were nightclubs, almost close to strip clubs by today's standards. And they gained little publicity for 2 years. And then they came back to Liverpool in 1962 and released the albums Please Please Me and With the Beatles. This was the albums that sparked their popularity, and by this time, 1963, Beatlemania was in store, which was the frenzy and mobs of people attacking them, just going crazy for them. Now that we looked how they got started, let's take a look in their music. All four of them grew up listening to rock and roll in the 1950s. Acts such as Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly. And they were definitely the main influences. You can see this through their earlier career the most, their early music. And it continues to span throughout their works until their departure in 1970. As they matured, their songwriting became more sophisticated. They concentrated more on the songwriting and less on the poppy aspects of which other bands were doing back in that day. They were going, if you take a look at the album Revolver, you compare it to another album called Hard Day's Night, which happened just a year before, you can see a vast difference and a great difference in the direction the band was going. They also explored new techniques, and including with that was drug usage. And marijuana and acid were definitely a heavy influence on their music at this time. And so was this instrument called the sitar, which can be heard in songs such as Norwegian Wood and With and Without You. And also, one of the LSD or acid influenced song would be Tomorrow Never Knows, which is a very trippy song off the Revolver album. And it was way ahead of its time, including, or it only had one chord, a C chord throughout the whole song. Now that we looked at the music, let's take a look at some of the influences they had on our culture. From Liverpool, they brought with them a rebellious attitude and long hair, which helped spark the 1960s counterculture revolutions. And with such easy access to the mainstream, people around were easily influenced by them and doing the same things they did. They also pushed limits in the studio and were very innovative in that way. They used mixing and loop tapes to a whole another level, and they also got different instruments that people had never used before, took it to a whole another level as well, including adding orchestras on songs such as Eleanor Rigby, stuff like that. The artists that the Beatles have inspired are so great that I could be here all day naming them. But just some that are included are different genres of musicians. Pink Floyd. Oh, okay. Now we have looked at the Beatles in a deeper way and some of their work and how they got started. And I think you need to appreciate the music the Beatles have to understand the music today. And I hope you can listen to them and continue the legacy.